The tension was palpable from the moment the debate began. It was supposed to be a discussion about healthcare reform, but what unfolded was one of the most dramatic moments in political history. Bernie Sanders, the progressive firebrand, found himself in a verbal clash so heated that it ended with him storming off the stage. The debate, hosted by a major news network, featured Sanders alongside Republican Senator Josh Hawley and independent candidate Joe Manchin. The night began with a fiery exchange about the cost of universal health care. Sanders passionately defended his Medicare for All plan, saying, "Health care is a human right, not a privilege for the wealthy few." Hawley smirked, his tone condescending. "And who's going to pay for this fantasy, Bernie? You're proposing a government takeover that would bankrupt the country." Sanders shot back, his voice rising. "That's rich coming from a party that hands out tax cuts to billionaires while millions can't afford insulin." The audience erupted into applause, but the calm didn't last long. Manchin jumped in, trying to strike a middle ground. "We need solutions that work for all Americans, not extreme policies that alienate half the country." Sanders turned to Manchin, his frustration clear. "Extreme? What's extreme is allowing people to die because they can't afford a doctor. You call that moderate, Joe?" The back and forth escalated, with Sanders dominating the stage, his passion electrifying the audience. But then Hawley delivered a jab that silenced the room. "Let's call it what it is, Bernie. You don't want reform, you want control. You're nothing but a socialist dictator in disguise." The words hung in the air like a bombshell. Gasps rippled through the audience as Sanders froze, his face a mix of shock and fury. "A socialist dictator," he repeated, his voice low but brimming with anger. "You dare to call me that after the lies and fear-mongering your party spreads every day?" Hawley leaned into the microphone, unfazed. "You want the government to run everything. That's not freedom, Bernie. That's tyranny." Sanders slammed his hand on the podium, his voice booming. "You don't know the first thing about tyranny. Tyranny is letting corporations profit off human suffering while you do nothing." The moderator attempted to intervene, but Sanders wasn't done. He pointed a finger directly at Hawley. "Your insults don't scare me. What scares me is the greed and corruption you represent." Hawley smirked, shrugging. "Deflect all you want, Bernie. The truth hurts." At that moment, Sanders visibly reached his breaking point. He stepped back from the podium, shaking his head. "This is a circus," he said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "I came here to talk about solutions, not to be slandered by people who don't care about working-class Americans." The audience sat in stunned silence as Sanders turned and walked off the stage. Cameras followed him as he exited, his team scrambling to keep up. Back in the debate hall, chaos erupted. Supporters of Sanders booed loudly, while Hawley's allies cheered. The moderator struggled to regain control. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's try to continue," but it was too late. The event had spiraled into disarray, with audience members shouting over each other. Within minutes, clips of the walkout flooded social media. Hashtags like #SandersWalkout and #Socialist Dictator debate began trending worldwide. Supporters praised Sanders for standing up to what they called unacceptable slander, while critics mocked him for being unable to handle tough questions. Late-night comedians wasted no time turning the moment into satire. One popular skit featured an actor playing Sanders, storming off the stage only to deliver a passionate speech to a janitor backstage about the injustice of low wages. Cable news devoted hours of coverage to the fallout. Progressive commentators defended Sanders, calling Hawley's remark a calculated smear designed to derail meaningful dialogue. Conservative pundits, however, celebrated Hawley for exposing Sanders' authoritarian tendencies. Sanders addressed the incident the next day at a rally in New York. Standing before a crowd of thousands, he declared, "I will not tolerate being vilified for fighting for the American people. If they call me a dictator for wanting health care for all, so be it. I wear that insult as a badge of honor." Hawley doubled down during an interview on a conservative talk show. Bernie walked out because he couldn't handle the truth. "If he can't debate me, how does he plan to lead the country?" The incident sparked debates across the nation, with voters split on whether Sanders' walkout was an act of principle or a sign of weakness. Some praised him for refusing to engage with what they saw as baseless attacks, while others argued that he should have stayed and fought back. The drama also had implications for the upcoming election. Polls showed Sanders gaining support among progressive voters, energized by his defiance. However, Hawley's favorability among conservatives also rose, bolstered by his combative performance. In the weeks that followed, the incident became a cultural phenomenon. Memes and parodies flooded the internet, while political analysts debated its long-term significance. For many, the moment symbolized the deep ideological divides tearing the country apart. As Sanders and Hawley returned to the campaign trail, their clash continued to dominate headlines. But one thing was clear: the debate wasn't just about healthcare, it was a battle for the soul of America, fought in the most dramatic fashion possible. As Bernie Sanders exited the stage, the cameras followed him into the dimly lit backstage area. His aides rushed to his side, their faces a mix of concern and confusion. "Senator, are you okay?" one asked. Sanders waved them off, his expression grim. "I'm fine," he muttered. "But I refuse to be part of a debate that turns into personal attacks." Meanwhile, back on stage, the tension was palpable. The moderator, visibly flustered, struggled to regain control. "Let's continue the debate with the remaining candidates," they said, their voice shaky. But the energy in the room had shifted. The audience murmured, some booing, others clapping in support of Sanders' decision. Josh Hawley, clearly emboldened, leaned into his microphone. "This is exactly what I've been saying. Bernie doesn't want to debate. He wants to lecture. When challenged, he runs." Joe Manchin, who had largely stayed out of the fiery exchange, finally spoke up. "I don't agree with Bernie on much, but personal attacks don't move this country forward," he said, drawing scattered applause. Hawley shrugged dismissively. "It's not personal, it's the truth." Outside the debate venue, protesters from both sides gathered, their chants echoing into the night. Supporters of Sanders held signs reading, "Healthcare is a right, not an insult," while Hawley's backers waved banners that said, "Socialism has no place in America." The incident quickly dominated the news cycle. Every major network aired clips of the confrontation, replaying Hawley's Socialist Dictator comment and Sanders' walkout on a loop. Analysts debated whether Sanders' exit was a principled stand or a sign of weakness. Progressive commentators rallied to Sanders' defense. On one popular political talk show, a host argued, "Bernie walked out because he refuses to play into the right's fearmongering. He stood up for decency, and that's what we need more of in politics." Conservative pundits, however, had a different take. "This is classic Bernie Sanders," one said on a cable news segment. "He talks big about fighting for the people, but when the heat's on, he can't handle it." The social media response was just as polarized. Hashtags like #BernieWalkout and #SocialistDictator debate trended worldwide, with users creating memes, threads, and videos dissecting every moment of the debate. One viral meme featured a cartoon Sanders walking off stage with a caption, "When the truth hurts too much." Late-night comedians had a field day with the incident. One skit showed an actor playing Sanders storming off stage, only to end up giving a fiery speech to a janitor about income inequality. The audience roared with laughter, but the underlying tension remained. As the controversy grew, Sanders addressed his supporters at a rally the following evening. Standing before a crowd of thousands in New York City, he delivered a defiant speech. "Last night, I walked out because I refused to engage in baseless attacks," he said, his voice booming. "If standing up for working people makes me a socialist dictator, so be it. I'll wear that insult as a badge of honor." The crowd erupted into cheers, chanting, "Bernie! Bernie!" Sanders continued, "We're not going to let name-calling and fear-mongering distract us from the real issues, like ensuring every American has access to health care." Josh Hawley, however, remained unapologetic. During an interview on a conservative talk show, he doubled down on his comments. "Bernie walked out because he knows his ideas don't hold up to scrutiny," he said, his tone smug. "If he can't handle a little criticism, how does he expect to lead?" The fallout extended far beyond the debate stage. Polls showed that Sanders' favorability among progressive voters had surged, with many praising him for refusing to tolerate what they saw as a smear campaign. At the same time, Hawley's approval among conservatives also climbed, solidifying his reputation as a firebrand willing to take on the left. The incident also reignited broader debates about the state of political discourse in America. Opinion pieces flooded newspapers and websites, with headlines like, "Is civility dead in politics?" and "The rise of personal attacks in political debates." In Congress, lawmakers weighed in on the controversy. Progressive Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez defended Sanders, calling Hawley's remarks an insult to every American fighting for a fairer system. Meanwhile, conservative Republicans rallied around Hawley, praising him for exposing the dangers of socialism. Even international media took notice. European outlets framed the clash as a reflection of America's deep ideological divide, while Chinese state media mocked the chaos as evidence of Western instability. Back on the campaign trail, Sanders used the incident to energize his base. At town halls and rallies, he framed the debate as a battle between truth and propaganda. "They can call me whatever they want," he told a crowd in Michigan. "But they can't stop this movement." Hawley, too, capitalized on the moment, turning it into a rallying cry for his supporters. During a speech in Texas, he declared, "I stood up to Bernie Sanders and his radical agenda, and I'll do it again." The cultural impact of the clash was undeniable. Artists created murals and illustrations depicting Sanders and Hawley as opposing forces, with one piece titled, "The Fight for America's Soul." Another featured Sanders walking off stage, with the caption, "Principles over Politics." As the dust settled, the incident became a defining moment in the election cycle. For some, it symbolized the growing divide between progressives and conservatives. For others, it highlighted the need for more substantive discussions in political debates. Months later, historians and analysts would look back on the Sanders walkout as a turning point in modern American politics. It underscored the deep divisions within the country but also the passion driving both sides of the ideological spectrum. For Sanders, the moment cemented his role as a principled fighter for progressive values. For Hawley, it reinforced his image as a combative voice for conservatism. And for the nation, it was a stark reminder of the challenges facing its democracy. As Bernie Sanders' dramatic walkout continued to dominate the news cycle, its ripple effects spread far beyond the debate stage. In Vermont, Sanders' home state, supporters rallied in solidarity, carrying signs reading, "We stand with Bernie." Meanwhile, in Missouri, Hawley's supporters held counter-rallies, chanting, "Stop the socialist agenda." The clash had become a national phenomenon, igniting debates in every corner of the country. Political commentators dissected the moment from every angle. Some argued that Sanders' walkout was a principled stand against incivility, while others saw it as a failure to engage in the tough conversations necessary for leadership. Bernie had an opportunity to push back on Hawley's accusations, one analyst said. Instead, he left the stage, and that might cost him. Hawley, emboldened by the controversy, went on a media blitz, appearing on multiple news outlets to reiterate his criticism. "Bernie Sanders wants to turn America into a socialist dystopia," he declared during a fiery interview. "And when I called him out, he couldn't handle it." Sanders, however, refused to let Hawley control the narrative. During a rally in Philadelphia, he delivered one of the most impassioned speeches of his career. "Let me be clear," he said, his voice echoing through the crowd. "The attacks on me are not just attacks on Bernie Sanders. They are attacks on the millions of Americans who are tired of a rigged system." The crowd roared in approval as Sanders continued. "They call me a socialist dictator because I believe that health care is a human right, because I believe in living wages, and because I believe in holding billionaires accountable. If that's radical, then so be it." Back in Washington, the political fallout escalated. Democratic lawmakers rallied around Sanders, with Senator Elizabeth Warren calling Hawley's remarks a blatant attempt to distract from real issues. On the Republican side, Senator Ted Cruz praised Hawley for exposing the dangerous ideas of the far left. The controversy also spilled into pop culture. A popular satirical YouTube channel released a parody video titled Bernie's Walkout, the musical, featuring actors portraying Sanders and Hawley singing exaggerated versions of their debate arguments. The video quickly amassed millions of views. Social media remained a battleground. Sanders supporters flooded platforms with hashtags like #StandWithBernie and #HealthCareIsARight, while Hawley's backers pushed hashtags such as #StopSocialism and #HawleyExposesBernie. The online discourse was fierce, with heated arguments breaking out in comment sections and threads. The incident also sparked a wave of late-night jokes. One comedian quipped, "Bernie walked out because he finally realized arguing with Josh Hawley is like playing chess with a pigeon. It's just going to knock over the pieces and declare victory." Meanwhile, Sanders' campaign team worked tirelessly to turn the moment into a rallying cry. They released a new ad featuring clips of Sanders' fiery speeches, ending with a tagline, "Fighting for the people, not the powerful." The ad resonated with progressives, drawing praise for its bold messaging. Hawley's team responded with their own ad, highlighting his debate remarks and accusing Sanders of abandoning the stage. "When the pressure's on, Bernie Sanders runs," the ad declared. "America deserves better." The cultural impact of the walkout was undeniable. High school debate teams used the incident as a case study, with students arguing over whether Sanders was right to leave the stage. Professors discussed the clash in political science classes, framing it as a reflection of America's deep ideological divide. Even international media took notice. European outlets framed the incident as a debate over the future of democracy, while Chinese state media used it as an opportunity to critique Western governance. "Even America's leaders cannot agree on the basics," one commentator said. As the controversy unfolded, Sanders and Hawley each saw their poll numbers rise among their respective bases. For Sanders, the incident galvanized progressive voters who admired his refusal to engage in what they saw as bad faith attacks. For Hawley, it solidified his reputation as a fearless conservative willing to take on the left. The debate also reignited discussions about civility in politics. Editorials in major newspapers debated whether personal attacks had become the norm in political discourse. "The Sanders-Hawley clash is a symptom of a larger problem," one op-ed read. "When debates devolve into name-calling, everyone loses." Despite the controversy, Sanders remained focused on his campaign. During a town hall in Michigan, he addressed the walkout directly. "I walked off that stage because I will not dignify lies with a response," he told the crowd. "But make no mistake, our fight is far from over." Hawley, meanwhile, leaned into his combative persona. At a rally in Texas, he declared, "Bernie Sanders walked out because he knows his ideas are indefensible. And I'll keep calling out socialism wherever I see it." The incident also had implications for other candidates in the race. Moderates like Joe Manchin sought to distance themselves from the clash, framing themselves as the voice of reason in a divided field. "We need leaders who can have tough conversations without walking out or throwing insults," Manchin said during an interview. As Election Day loomed, the Sanders-Hawley showdown remained a focal point of the campaign. Analysts speculated that the incident could have lasting effects on voter perceptions, shaping the narrative of the race in unexpected ways. Even months later, the walkout continued to spark debates. Historians and political scientists analyzed its significance, with some arguing that it marked a turning point in modern American politics. "It was a moment that laid bare the deep divisions in our country," one historian wrote. But it also showed the passion driving those divisions. For Sanders, the walkout became a symbol of his commitment to fighting for his values. For Hawley, it reinforced his reputation as a provocateur unafraid to take on his opponents. And for the nation, it was a reminder of the challenges and stakes facing its democracy.